Okay, hello everyone. This is the first of our N4 lessons, the very first one. And we are jumping in. N4 it's a nice step up from N5. And some things will come to you very easily. Some things are kind of like a punch in the gut. And oh my goodness, I didn't realize Japanese was this hard. And we're going to work together to try and pull away some of that craziness and have these be something that you can understand, something that you can do. And today we will be getting started with the very first one. We'll be doing about one a week. Just in case you don't know about this. Inside of renshuu, to access these, you go into the menu that's in the top left, and it's under resources and then Japanese basics. And we are down here in the pre-intermediate slash N4 grammar. And today we will be talking about giving and receiving. So let's get started. There are three verbs we're going to focus on today. And again, these verbs, I feel they're not quite as useful thinking about them as single units as much as patterns. As in this situation, I use this one. In this situation, I use that one. Because the meanings feel very similar in some situations. But we're going to be talking about ageru, we're going to be talking about kureru, and we're going to be talking about morao. And these are these are words that are used to describe giving and receiving. And there's two different ways we can use these. One way we're going to talk about today. The next one we'll talk about next week. But today we are going to talk about things, the giving and receiving of objects. So I gave him a Godzilla, or I received an apple from Godzilla. Because why not? Godzilla's friendly. And it's, or giving someone a letter, receiving money, stuff like that. It's typically, but not always, it could be I received, a word of thanks from someone. But for today's purposes, we're going to talk about physical objects. And so giving or getting some kind of physical object. And with these two, we're going to put them into two different groups. And I believe we're going to hit morale first. But morale is typically your receiving one. When you talk about the receiving of something, we're going to use morale. When we talk about giving things, we're going to use ageru and kureru. But even with that, it's going to seem a bit strange. And so that's why with kureru and ageru, I don't really focus on the meaning so much as the when we use it. We're going to jump into morale first. So let's get started. Now, we have a few sentences here. And real fast, I'm going to read these. And then I'm going to kind of break them down and tell you what they are. The first one says, Tegami o moraemashita. I received a letter. I being the default subject because we don't have one, so we're just going by context. The second one, Okaasan kara okane o morao. I will get or I will receive money from mom. The last one, Ani wa sensei ni hon o moratta. My older brother got a book from his teacher. Now, let's look at them and let's break down how this works. Now, one of the things that makes these tricky is that often, or most of the time rather, with morale, with ageru, and sometimes with kureru, you're dealing with multiple particles that are hooked into the same verb. If you say gakko ni ikimasu, I go to school, or pan o kaimashita, I bought some bread. You just need that single particle to fully convey the meaning of the verb. But with these, whenever you're receiving something, it's usually from one person or from one thing to another, Or if you're giving, it's going from A to B. There's typically two actors involved in this transaction, so you need two things to mark them. And as well as the thing that is being brought from one, that's being given or received from one to the other. And so there's typically, with both formats, the O, as you can probably guess based on the examples, O is used for marking the thing. What am I receiving? What am I giving? That's the O. The O is never used for one of the people that is receiving or giving. So in these sentences, we have tegami o, a letter. Okane o, money. Hon o, a book. So the O is used for marking the thing. So let's look at the first sentence. Tegami o moraimashita. I received a letter, or I got a letter. Who did I get it from? We're not sure. It's not mentioned. In the same way that in English, you could say, I got a letter. That would work. You could also say, I got a letter from my friend. And that would also work. But at its most simple, you have, I got a letter, or he got a letter. Now, let's look at the second one. Let me jump in. Okaa-san kara okane o morau. I get some money, or I get money from okaa-san, from mom. Now, I need to mention both of these sentences at the same time. The second sentence, or the third sentence rather, uses ni instead of kara. For unknown reasons, probably just to drive us crazy, kara and ni serve the same purpose when using morau. They both mark the person who gives it. Or I'm going to put it in a way that matches the, excuse me, it matches the particles a bit better. It's where the thing is coming from, or from whom the thing is coming from. So if the money is coming from mom, okaa-san kara, I could just as easily drop out the kara and stick the ni in there and say okaa-san ni okane o morau, and that would be okay. Similarly, in the third sentence, that sensei ni, from my teacher, I got a book, you could change the ni to a kara, and that would work as well. So which one do you use? In my experience, being in Japan, I feel like kara is used 90% or more of the time. Ni is put in there because you will see it from time to time, and so you should know that it's there. However, it is not nearly as common. Not nearly as common. The kara, which, always shows, if you remember our lessons with N5, we talked about kara marking the beginning of a line. A line in time, a line in space, from where something comes. Texas kara kimashita. I came from Texas. So in that sense, the kara matches up really well. This money, where did it come from? It came from mother. It came from mom. You will see the ni from time to time. However, it is, it's not as common. And it's worth pointing out that, in this, we have two, or rather look at the third sentence. We have ani, older brother, and we have sensei. So we have two people. The ani is the receiver, and the teacher is the giver. When you're using morau, who's more important? So look at that last sentence. Now, I don't mean more important in a who's more valuable kind of thing, but in the context of the sentence, which one do you think is more important? So ani or sensei? Any ideas? If you just had to guess, what does your gut tell you? I hear both. Oh, I've got both. The topic is typically the most important thing in the sentence. The topic or the subject. And then everything else is just giving more information about that. So think about the word morale and think about the word receive. If I can spell correctly, that's not right. I'm definitely an English native speaker. There we go. Receiving is talking about someone receiving something. The word itself doesn't even refer to the giver. That's we use when we focus on who's giving, we use the word to give. The teacher gave my brother a book. The teacher is the main focus in that sentence. But with morale, whatever comes first, the topic or the subject, and it might not be in there, like the first sentence, that one's the most important thing. They're the person receiving the thing. And then it just happens to be that the teacher was the person giving it. So with morale, the receiver is the focus. And that's why they come first. That's why they're at the top of the sentence. If they're listed at all. They might not be listed. It might be contextual, that it's already I. But morale is focusing on the receiver and not the giver. Now, let's, 1 second. If we, pull all this back to a pattern, I mentioned, let's focus on these patterns. This is what it's going to look like. The receiver, and this is one of those lines a lot of people see. I think they see this and they decide, I'm out of it. Japanese is not for me. This is too much. But focus on the chunks. Focus on the chunks. The recipient, the receiver, is the most important, so they're coming at the beginning. The person that's giving it, or where is it coming from, they're going to get the kara, sometimes the ni, but let's just focus on kara. They're getting the kara. And then the object, and this is always the case, the object of the action gets the o. If you buy bread, or if you eat bread, or if you give bread, or if you receive bread, in every single situation, bread's going to get that o. The object always gets the o. So this is the pattern that we're going to use. Now, let's practice this a little bit. Let's practice a little bit. And I'm going to give you kind of a template. And I'd like you to try filling this out. I'm going to stick to casual speech most of the time when we learn N4. But tell me something that you received from someone. Tell me something that you received from someone. For example, I got a picture, like a drawing from my son. And it's awesome. And so I would say, 私は息子から絵をもらった。So if you'd like, I'd love to see your sentences. I'd love to see you give it a try. FIFO, tomo is usually tomodachi. You see tomo kind of as a prefix sometimes, attached to certain nouns, but you very rarely see it by itself. I like Pokochira's example because they just said, screw that watashi wa. I don't need that. It's obvious I'm talking. So they just dropped it. And they started with the minna kara. but it's looking pretty good. People are getting donuts. Aruku, I feel like that kanji wouldn't be used. I'm thinking that you'd probably use the life or spirit, like inochi, is my guess. Although I can't say I've heard that sentence. I feel like more often I would hear the, my mother gave birth to me. And that form is one that we'll use next week, actually. And we're sticking with moral today. Uketoru is a verb that means to receive, but it has more of a formal feel to it. For example, it feels like something that you would walk up to a counter and sign for and then receive. As in, oh, you have a package for me. Yes, please sign here. And you sign and then you receive the package. That would be closer to uketoru. But anyway, I love the sentences I'm seeing come up. Thank you so much. Now, there's one small thing to mention. We never use this to describe us giving us, as in you, I receiving something. Typically, when you talk about, say you gave your friend some money. It's typically, even in English, I'd say it's more often that you say, I gave my friend some money. I would argue is more common than saying my friend got some money from me. And it's similar in Japanese. So when we're using moral, we don't talk about and ki is not that ki doesn't mean spirit or life in that sense. So no, that wouldn't work. Moral you don't use to talk about something that someone received from you, the speaker. So you're correct. Watashi kara or watashi ni, you just don't do those. Typically, you would say, I gave this to so and so, which is what we'll cover in just a minute. So I would just hold on to the rule that I typed above. With moral, you can receive it. You can say, I got this from so and so, I got this from my mother, but you will not say, my mother got this from me. You would say, I gave this to my mother. So that's moral. Moral is the easiest of them because when you're talking about receiving, regardless of who's giving, who's receiving, if you're focusing on the reception, the getting of the something, then everything else is, there's no special cases. But let's jump into the next topic, which is these two guys. This is where things start to split up a little bit, and these have to be grouped together. Ageru and kureru both mean in general, and you see I'm hedging on the language I use, and you'll see why. It's not that I don't know what I'm talking about, it's that it does not always necessarily translate this way. But these are focused on the giving. These are used to give. However, because they both mean to give, well, obviously there must be some difference between the two of them. Like when do I use one and when do I use the other? And this little box, let's talk about this. So this is used for, let me stop for a second. Ageru is used when you're describing giving something from A to B, from someone to someone else. And I'm going to type this out in the chat as well. And there's a couple ways. There's a couple ways to do it. And let me explain it first, and then I'm going to talk about what's on the screen. A and B can be, for example, this. It could be from a teacher to a student. It could be from me to my friend. It could be from me to my son. It could be from my son to his friend. It could be from a student to a teacher. Question. Again, don't look at the shared screen yet, but look at what I just typed. Do you see something on the left side that's not on the right side? There's something in the A column that's not in the B column. Me. Exactly. Ageru is used when you're giving something from an inside group to an outside group, or an inner circle to an outer circle. And inner circles and outer circles, it's a thing in Japan that's not just in Japanese. It is rooted in the way that Japanese people see social groupings. And everyone is, depending on the situation, either inside with you or outside, and they're not with you. And we have some of this in other cultures as well, but it's particularly strong in Japanese because it affects the language that's used. We have quote unquote tribes in Western culture. I'm American, and family is a tribe. A tribe might also, or a circle might also refer to a group of friends, or it might refer to a company where you identify with the company, and then everyone else is on the outside of that. With ageru, ageru is always going from someone to someone outside of their circle. So go back and look at all the examples I gave before. A teacher giving to a student, me giving to my friend, me giving to my son. It can stay inside the circle or it can go out. My son going to his friend or student going to his teacher. But the biggest rule, and this is the rule that I think will carry you through the differentiation between these two, ageru is not to you. Get that in your head. Ageru is not to you. You cannot give to you. And I'm going to type it out one more time. And we're still in theory, right? We still haven't seen sentences. So once you see the sentences, this is going to kind of, come down and you'll make more sense. Ageru is not to your inner circle. It's giving in the other direction. Now let's look at some examples. Let's take this. So if you're going from you to your friends, you use ageru. If you're going from you to everyone else, you use ageru. If you're going from your family to someone else, you use ageru. Okay, examples. Let's bring this into reality. These should be very clear. Tomodachi ni kuki o ageru. Now I like this ni. With ageru, I like this ni because it feels like the ni that we've come to know and love. The ni always shows the direction of the action, right? If you say gakko ni iku, I'm going where? Going to the school. That's the goal. That's where the going is going towards. And with ageru, it's the same thing. If I say tomodachi ni, already you know, oh, this is going to the friends. Tomodachi ni kuki o ageru. I give a cookie to my friend. The second one, お父さんは医者にペンをあげました。My father gave a pen to the doctor. Third example. 私はあの人に傘をあげた。I gave an umbrella to that person. I gave an umbrella to that person. So let's step back for a minute and let's look at this. We had a page. It's not in the lesson, but I'm going to type it out for you. All right, here we go. The giver gives the thing to the recipient. Giver wa recipient ni thing o ageru. Again, when you're giving, who's the most important, relatively speaking? The giver. They're the one doing the action. They're doing the giving. That's why they come first in the sentence. Just like with moral, where you're talking about the receiving. And the focus of the sentence is the person receiving it. That's why they come first. Here, you've got the giver. The giver is giving something to someone. And if you wanted to, you could swap out the recipient and thing. Like you could put the thing first. You could say, cookie o tomodachi ni ageru. And again, I'm looking at the first sentence at the top of the page. You could do it as it's written. Tomodachi ni cookie o ageru. You could, it's not as common, but you could say, cookie o tomodachi ni ageru. So those two are not fixed in stone, but the ni is showing the direction. It's showing where that action's going, where the giving is going. The o, like before, like always, is showing the object. The object that's being moved from A to B. And that's the case whether it's the cookie being moved, the pen being given, or the umbrella being given. Now, let's practice this. If we do too much without actually talking about, without practicing, it'll all blend together. So let's try and make something real. So you all have friends or a teacher or people you care about. Let's think about someone that you want to give something to. You haven't done it yet. But I'd love to give this something to someone. And so we're going to use the tie form. I want to. So what would you like to do? For me, if you know me well enough, you know that I'm a Lego fan. So I might say something like this. 私は息子にレゴをあげたい. I want to give my son some Lego. It's a fight between giving him Lego and not giving him too much Lego and spoiling him. But so I do have some in my room that he doesn't know I have. I would like to give him, but I haven't yet. So think about someone. What would you like to give them? And try this pattern on for size. Give it a shot, see how it feels. Demi is going straight for cats. I'm not sure if the cat's going to appreciate the cat clothes, but I wish you the best of luck in giving it to them. Kadrian would like to give a beautiful, Kadrian, kirei na. Don't forget that na. Kirei na yubiwa o agetai. And your sentence would probably work, although there's a slightly better version that would work better, and it's actually going to be next week's lesson. So hold on to it for now. What we're talking about today is focusing more on physical things that you can give to someone. And when you're talking about doing an action, now in English, you would say give. You'd say, I want to give my friends a tour of the campus, a campus tour. But when it comes down to it, what you're doing is you're doing an action for them. You're showing them the campus. And the doing an action for someone else, we're going to cover next week. It'll be part 2. But it's a very common mistake to make. And once you have both lessons in hand, you'll see how they fit together. The second one, I feel, is much easier once we get this first one done. Grace is looking to give someone a cinnamon roll, which sounds great. You can give one to me if you want. I love cinnamon rolls. But I'm loving these sentences. They're looking great. You guys, you're getting the pattern. And remember, who's the only person that can't get something with ageru? What did we say before? Me, or who else? Or my close circle. So let me give you a couple examples for that. Let's see. And I'm going to use Pocochira since I just saw their name pop up. This would not work. Here's an example. Let me get my little pad. There we go. Pocochira wa watashi ni hono ageta. Pocochira gave me a book. It sounds pretty natural in English, but this does not work. This also would not work. Similarly, this is not me specifically, but this is from outside of my circle into my circle. Pocochira wa watashi no musuko ni hono ageta. Pocochira gave my son a book. So if we're thinking about circles, who's on our inside circle, who's on our outside? Pocochira, as far as I know, is not a family member of mine. So Pocochira is on the outside, giving something towards the inside of my circle. Can't use ageru. But you're going to see how we do it in just a minute. Now, as I noted, we've been talking about inner circle, outer circle, me, not me. It can be about, completely unrelated people as well. It's not well, my family's not involved in this, so I can't use this. That's not the case. So if you look at the sentences on the screen now, sensei wa gakusei ni kame o agemasu. The teacher gives paper to the students. By the way, just by reading the sentence, how old are the students? Any idea? How old are the students? College-ish, yes. Typically, seito is used below university. And gakusei, if you say gakusei, it's usually university. Seito is usually for the younger ones. A second sentence, ane wa tomodachi ni hana o ageta. My older sister gave her friends some flowers. Okay, let's jump into the final slice, which is kureru. Now, we mentioned before, I threw out ageru and kureru together. They both mean to give, but kureru is extremely restrictive. Kureru is only if something is going from further away to closer in. Basically, if you are getting something from anyone, or if your family is getting something, your inner circle is getting something from someone else. So I'm going to type that out for you. Kureru could be you getting something from anyone, or your inner circle getting something from anyone outside. Now you really have to focus on the fact that both of those sentences start with you or your. You must be part of this. Your inner circle must, and when I say you, I don't mean Adaku specifically, I mean you, the speaker, whoever is making this sentence, whoever is speaking, whoever is writing. You are in there. And so if that's happening, if I get a book from Pokochira, or if my son gets a book from his teacher, now we're going to use kureru. So we just took all those sentences we had a second ago. A friend gives something to another friend, that it's just ageru, or sorry, ageta. Ageta is used for every situation except when you or your inner circle is receiving something. That's why kureru is the smaller set of usages. It's the tiny one. It's only when something is being given to you. Any other situation is ageru. Something being given to you, being given to your inner circle, kureru. Other than that, ageru. Your inner circle is, generally speaking, it's you initially and your family, or it could be you and a group of friends relative to, someone that's not in your friend circle. So it's not, inner circle is not an absolute term. So from your family's perspective, everyone that's not your family is outside. But if you're with a group of students, like you're in class and your other students, and the teacher gives all of you, including you, some candy, that's coming into your inner circle. Your inner circle being you and your friends, your students, and the teacher being on the outside. In the same way, let's say, so let me type these out just so they're not, it's also you and your family getting something from a neighbor. Here, your family is your inner circle. You and some students and some fellow students getting something from a teacher. You and your fellow students are your inner circle. Now watch this. Your school getting a donation from a company. Now your school is the inner circle. Like your school would refer to the donation and they would use kureru or some form of it. Because all of a sudden your circle, your inner circle has changed. And it's now, here's the inside. We're the school and we're getting something from outside. But again, look at all three of those situations. You is in all of them. So you is the fundamental component that has to be part of this to make kureru work. So take a look at the sentences on the screen. 私は、友達は私にクッキーをくれる。My friends give me a cookie. Here it's coming to me. It's coming to I. The second one. 医者はお父さんにペンをくれました。The doctor gave a pen to my father. My father is part of my inner circle. He's part of my family. You use くれました. Now, Those first two sentences, the order would be different, but you could rip out everything and change it into in English, and you have a sentence that made sense. 友達は私にクッキーをくれる. You see the person giving, 友達. You see the person receiving, me. You see what's being given, the cookie. It's all there. Look at the last sentence though. あの人は傘をくれた. That person gave an umbrella to who? Who's getting the umbrella here? Not mentioned. Who is getting the umbrella? The me is implied. The me is implied because it's kureru. Because it's kureru, it has to go into the inner circle. The inner circle has to have you in it. So if you see kureru, in fact, if you were comparing the top sentence, watashi ni kuki o kureru, if you're comparing that, and you're comparing the bottom sentence, ano hito wa kasa o kureta. Just a guess, which one do you think is more common? With watashi ni or without watashi ni? With or without? Which do you feel is more commonly used in Japanese? I see 2 people have said without, 3 without. See what the 4th person says. It's without. Yes, it's true. Most textbooks, and I'm doing the same, don't put in watashi ni. It feels overkill. It feels like overkill. It's like, of course it's to you. It's kureru. The only time that you mark that is when it's someone in your inner circle, but it's not you directly. For example, the second one. Otou-san ni, it's your inner circle, it's your family, but it's not you specifically. Then you can mention it. Then it's worth mentioning. But this last sentence is excellent because it shows you the most common form, which is dropping the watashi ni. However, it's still the same pieces that are being used. It's the same building blocks. With ageru and with kureru, the giver is the main person, so we're talking about giving. They're coming first. The recipient, or the direction that the actions go into, is getting that ni. And then the object, being an object, is always getting that o. And what it's saying in the text, notice that the word order and particles are flipped. It's flipped in the sense that, it's not the ordering that's flipped so much. It's that when we talk about moral, to receive, the recipient comes first. They're the focus of the sentence. They're the topic. And then the giver comes next. The giver comes next. So let's try this. And I'll mention what's on the screen in just a minute, so put that aside. But let's try this. We have just a few more minutes today before we're done. Think about something that someone has given you. Think about something that someone has given you. And I'm going to say this. Tomodachi wa okashi o kureta. My friend gave me some candy. Yeah. If it was a good friend, they were probably giving me Haribo, because that's my favorite. Tomodachi wa okashi o kureta. Pokochira is using a non-physical thing. They're talking about power. Minna wa chikara o kureta. Everyone gave me power. Maybe Pokochira had a speech contest or some kind of competition or an interview. And before that, they said, you can do it. Go, Pokochira. We believe in you. And Pokochira, they're like, oh, I can do this. They got some chikara from everyone. Now, demi demi sentence grammatically works, but would not fit in Japanese. Um, the key being that kureru is a positive thing. Kureru is a positive thing. They are giving something to you. So usually, even in English, you wouldn't say, for example, the school, the school gave me disappointment. I feel like in English it'd be closer, I got. Now the wording's changing. We're using verbs instead of adjectives, but you'd say something like, I got disappointed because of the school, or I got disillusioned because of the school, or something like that. And so and I'm glad you brought that up because that's a really good point. With kureru, it's a positive gift. Or at worst, it's neutral. Like, okay, the doctor gave me a pen. Pen o kureta. Okay, maybe you're not over the moon that you got a pen, but you're not angry about it. Morao and ageru can be good or bad. So they're neutral in the sense that you can use them in positive ways or in negative ways. They don't have a specific positive or negative slant to them. So moral, for example, is received. Let me type out a sentence. Watashi wa you could say something like this. Watashi wa shukudai o moratta. Oh, I got some homework. Ugh. Probably not a good thing. You could, it's not necessarily a favor in the sense that you are asking for it. So I want to be really clear with that because this is going to tie into next week's lesson. Kureru is usually for something that you didn't ask for, but you got it. A favor, very specifically, really focusing on that English, a favor is something that you ask someone else to do. So, hey, could you give me some chocolate? Yes, here you go. Thank you. That would be a favor if we're being super literal, which is helpful in this case. Kureru is typically something where it's like, oh, I got a letter from my sister. Great. Or oh, I got some candy from mom. Not a mom, give me some candy. Thank you. It's not that. But kureru has a positive sense to it, and it has a I didn't ask for this. Not in a I don't want it. It's just I didn't request it. I got it. It's good. Kind of thing. But these are excellent questions. Thank you for bringing these up. Now, if I don't recommend this until you get better, but if you want to dive into the world of sarcastic Japanese, sure, you could use kureru with a negative thing. So if you want to say, "Oh, the teacher gave me some homework. Thank you, teacher," kind of thing, you could say, "Ah, shukudai o kuremashita," and there's tears coming out of your eyes. Then you could, then rules because sarcasm, usually breaks things a little bit. But if you were to say negative thing, "o kureta," then there's a sarcastic undertone to it. Because why would you see a bad thing as positive? You wouldn't. So it would be sarcastic. Last thing, it's already on the screen, so you've probably been looking at it and thinking about some. With, before when we were dealing with moral, we had the two things. We had the kara and we had ni. The person that you're getting it from, you can use kara or use ni. And I said, it's usually kara, and that's true. And that fits in our translation sense because kara is from, and if you got a cookie, from someone, then you could say kara. With ageru and with kuru, you can only use ni. You can only use ni. And this is convenient because it makes the most sense logically. Ni is used for the direction of the action. And with ageru, to give, and with kureru, to give, it's going to someone. Who's it going to? Mark it with a ni. So I'm going to type that real fast. Moral, kara, marks who it is coming from. And kureru, ageru, ni marks who it is going to. Yay! That's it. We are done with this. And the particles will kind of throw you for a loop initially, but if you can focus on this, it's much easier to use in real life and much harder when this is being taught to you in a textbook and then you have questions that are flipping ageru and moral to one another. But just focus on those core elements that we were talking about. Moral is for receiving things. Ageru is for giving things. Kureru is for giving things to you / your inner circle. Kureru is for you. If it's not you that's getting it, then you use ageru. Oh, I just see that I typed ageru. So let me change that. Aruku, your question, it's not correct, but that's exactly what we're doing next week. Is today we talked about giving things, physical or non-physical. Next week we are going to talk about doing things for others. And the sneak preview is what I just typed out. It's not the no-o, although if you had to do it that way, like if that was possible, then the way you typed it would have been right. Like you used the nominalization correctly and all that good stuff. But it's next week, preview, is te kureru, te moral, and te ageru. And it works almost exactly the same way, but there's a few nuance changes that we'll talk about. Any other questions before we wind things up today? Okay, then I believe this is the end of the lesson. And if you need to look this up again, it's in renshuu under the resources Japanese basics section.